What if I told you that Iran, yes, the modern-day nation of Iran, plays a vital role in the Bible's overarching story of prophecy and global events? Typically, when people think of the Bible, their minds immediately go to Israel, Egypt, and Babylon. But Iran, once known as Persia, is not just another empire. It is a nation specifically mentioned in prophecy, playing a crucial part in shaping the future of God's chosen people. The history of the Iranian people is more fascinating than most realize, stretching all the way back to the time of Noah. From the descendants of Noah to the rise of Cyrus the Great, Iran's biblical roots are deeply intertwined with some of the most pivotal moments in Scripture. The most astounding part is that God used Persia, a kingdom led by pagan kings, to deliver Israel, rebuild the temple, and fulfill prophecies spoken centuries before. In this exploration, we'll delve into how Persia's impact extends beyond military might to being central in both the Old Testament and prophetic visions of the future. To understand Iran's biblical roots, we must go back to the days after the Great Flood. According to Genesis 10, Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, became the ancestors of the nations. Japheth's son, Madai, is the forefather of the Medes, who later joined with the Persians to form the mighty Persian Empire. The Persians, emerging from the same region, rose to prominence centuries later, but both groups trace their lineage to a shared Iranian ancestry. This connection places the Iranian people at the very heart of post-flood history, directly linking them to one of the oldest genealogies in the Bible. Fast forward several centuries, and we see the rise of Persia, a kingdom that would become a crucial part of the biblical narrative. The Medes and Persians formed an alliance under Cyrus the Great, who founded the Achaemenid Empire, also known as the First Persian Empire. At its peak, the Persian Empire spanned from the Indus River to North Africa, covering many regions mentioned in the Bible, including Israel, Babylon, and Egypt. However, Persia's significance was not just in its military power or vast territory. Its importance lies in how God used it to fulfill his promises to the Israelites. In 586 BC, the Babylonian Empire, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, conquered Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, and took the Israelites into captivity. The Israelites would remain in Babylon for 70 years, as prophesied by Jeremiah. Then Cyrus the Great, a Persian king, conquered Babylon in 539 BC, bringing about a dramatic change. In the book of Ezra, we read about Cyrus issuing a decree allowing the Israelites to return to their land and rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. This decree fulfilled the prophecy of Jeremiah and marked the end of Israel's exile. Cyrus's decree was more than just a political act, it was the fulfillment of God's prophecy. In Isaiah 44:28, God calls Cyrus by name more than 150 years before his birth, referring to him as his shepherd and one who would fulfill God's purposes. In Isaiah 45:1, Cyrus is even called God's anointed, a title typically reserved for the kings of Israel. How could a foreign pagan king be called God's anointed? The answer lies in God's sovereignty. He can use anyone, even those outside his covenant people, to accomplish his divine will. Cyrus's rise to power marked the end of Israel's 70 years of captivity in Babylon and set the stage for the restoration of the temple. Under the leadership of Zerubbabel and with the blessing of Cyrus, the Israelites began rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem. This event was a significant turning point for Israel, highlighting the central role of Persia in God's redemptive plan for his people. Persia had not only defeated Babylon, the nation that had oppressed Israel, but had also played a key part in Israel's rebirth as a nation. Persia's role in biblical history didn't end with Cyrus and the rebuilding of the temple. The book of Esther offers another powerful example of how Persia was used by God to protect his people. In the time of King Xerxes I, also known as Ahasuerus, a plot was hatched by Haman, a Persian official, to exterminate the Jews living within the Persian Empire. Driven by his hatred for the Jews, Haman manipulated the king into issuing a decree for their annihilation. However, through divine providence, a young Jewish woman named Esther became queen of Persia. Encouraged by her uncle Mordecai, Esther took a bold and dangerous step by revealing her Jewish identity to the king and pleading for the survival of her people. In Esther 4:14, Mordecai famously says, "Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Esther's courage led to a dramatic reversal of Haman's plot. King Xerxes ordered Haman's execution, and a new decree was issued that allowed the Jews to defend themselves against their enemies. This story, recorded in the book of Esther, is celebrated annually during the Jewish festival of Purim, serving as a reminder of how God used Persia, particularly Queen Esther, to preserve the Jewish people. Once again, Persia, though a foreign empire, became an instrument through which God protected his people. Persia's involvement in God's plan didn't stop at the protection of the Jewish people. The empire's influence also extended into prophetic visions about the future of world empires and God's ultimate plan for humanity. The book of Daniel is filled with powerful prophecies that reveal the rise and fall of empires, including Persia. In Daniel 2, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon has a dream of a great statue made of different materials, each symbolizing a world empire. The silver chest and arms represent the Medo-Persian Empire, which would succeed Babylon as the dominant power in the ancient world. In Daniel 7, the prophet Daniel has a vision of 4 beasts representing 4 successive empires. The second beast, a bear raised up on one side, represents the Medo-Persian Empire, symbolizing its dual nature, formed by the combined strength of the Medes and the Persians. This empire would expand greatly, and its influence, particularly under Cyrus, would forever change the course of history. Another significant vision in Daniel 8 depicts a ram with 2 horns, symbolizing the Medes and Persians, charging in all directions and conquering vast territories. However, the vision also includes a goat with a prominent horn, symbolizing Greece and its king, Alexander the Great, who would eventually conquer the Persian Empire. These visions place Persia at the heart of God's prophetic timeline, demonstrating that its rise and fall were not mere accidents of history, but part of God's divine plan. Persia's time of dominance would give way to Greece, but during its reign, God's people experienced deliverance and restoration, fulfilling the prophecies of Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. Though the Persian Empire fell to Alexander the Great in the 4th century BC, its influence continued to resonate throughout history, even during the time of the New Testament. By the time of Jesus' birth, the Persian Empire had been replaced by the Greek and later Roman empires. However, the legacy of Persian culture, governance, and administration had a lasting impact on the ancient world. One of the more intriguing connections between Persia and the New Testament is found in the story of the Magi, the wise men who visited the infant Jesus in Matthew 2. Many scholars believe that the Magi came from Persia and were likely Zoroastrian priests, part of an ancient religious tradition in Persia that involved astrology and the interpretation of omens. The journey of the Magi to worship the newborn King of the Jews underscores Persia's enduring connection to the biblical story, even after the fall of the Persian Empire. The wisdom traditions of Persia continued to influence the ancient Near East, and it was the Persian scholars who recognized the significance of the star that heralded Jesus' birth. Furthermore, Persia's legacy of religious tolerance set the stage for the spread of Judaism and eventually Christianity. The Persian Empire was known for allowing its subjects to maintain their religious practices, a policy that would influence later empires, including Rome. This environment of religious freedom contributed to the flourishing of Jewish communities in the region, which, in turn, helped lay the foundation for the eventual spread of the gospel throughout the Roman Empire. As we conclude this exploration of Persia's role in the Bible, it's important to consider the future of Iran in light of biblical prophecy. Many scholars and theologians believe that Iran, known in prophecy as Persia, will play a pivotal role in the events of the end times. One of the most significant prophecies involving Persia is found in Ezekiel 38-39, where the prophet describes a coalition of nations that will come against Israel in the last days. Among these nations is Persia, which will join forces with Gog of Magog and others in a massive battle known as the War of Gog and Magog. This prophecy, often interpreted as an event yet to occur, paints a picture of a final confrontation between the forces of evil and God's people, with Israel at the center of the conflict. While the exact nature and timing of this war are subjects of debate, the inclusion of Persia, modern-day Iran, in this prophecy suggests that Iran's influence in the region will continue to have spiritual significance in the end times. Additionally, Daniel's prophecies about the rise and fall of empires, including Persia, reveal a broader theme of God's sovereignty over the nations. Persia's role in biblical prophecy demonstrates that no empire, no matter how powerful, is outside of God's control. God raises up nations and brings them down according to his divine plan. As we witness modern-day events in the Middle East, particularly the ongoing tensions between Iran and Israel, it's important to approach these developments from a biblical perspective. The events unfolding today are part of a much larger story, one that began with the pages of the Bible and will ultimately culminate in the fulfillment of God's promises. The story of Persia, now Iran, in the Bible is a remarkable example of how God can use even the most unlikely nations to fulfill his divine purposes. From the descendants of Japheth through Madai to the rise of Cyrus the Great, Persia has played a pivotal role in biblical history, from the restoration of Israel to the protection of the Jewish people in the book of Esther. But Persia's significance does not end with its historical role. The prophecies of Daniel, Isaiah, and Ezekiel remind us that Persia was part of God's larger plan, not only for the nations of the past, but for the future as well. Iran's place in biblical prophecy highlights its continued role in the unfolding events leading to the end times. As we look at the modern world and the ongoing tensions involving Iran and Israel, it is crucial to remember that every event, every nation, and every leader is part of God's plan. The story of Persia is a testament to the truth that God can use even foreign powers to fulfill his promises and bring about his ultimate plan for salvation. Today, Iran continues to exert influence on the world stage, and its connection to the Bible serves as a reminder that history is more than just the rise and fall of empires. It is the unfolding of God's plan for the redemption of his people and the world.